Welcome to Candidates on Campus, presented by Waterfront TV, a town hall discussion, live from the Nova Scotia Community College's Waterfront Campus, featuring Dartmouth South candidates, Liberal Alan Rowe, New Democratic Party Mary Bingo, and Progressive Conservative Gord Gamble, answering your questions on energy, healthcare, education, and jobs. Tweet your questions live at WTV_NSCC. And now, here's your host, Troy Merrick.
Good afternoon and welcome to Candidates on Campus presented by Waterfront TV. I'm Troy Merrick and today we're hosting the MLA candidates for the Dartmouth South riding here at NSCC's Waterfront Campus. We'll be taking questions from our audience and from social media. Katie Lonis is watching that for us. Katie?
Thanks, Troy. I'll be taking questions for the candidates from social media. If you have a question throughout the show, tweet at WTV_NSCC. Now, this isn't just for those at home. We encourage audience members here with us today to tweet as well. So don't be shy. We want your questions, and we'll have your first question from social media a little later on. Back to you, Troy.
Thanks, Katie. It's time now to meet our candidates. Each of them has a minute and a half for their opening statements. Now, earlier on, we did a random draw to see who would go first, and it will be Progressive Conservative candidate, Mr. Gord Gamble.
Thank you, Troy, and thank you for being here, and thanks for the invitation. First, let me say that I'm very pleased to talk about the fact that I was able to hire 6 Nova Scotia Community College graduates from your computer graphics graphic design program, working very closely with Crystal McManus. It was great from my business perspective, but it was also very fulfilling to give those young people their first job in their area of study. The PC Party platform deals with the fundamental principles of our economy: taxes, government spending, and jobs. By lowering the HST and eliminating the tax on gasoline, we will leave more money, more of your hard-earned money in your pockets. The immediate response from the other parties is often, you can't lower taxes without cutting spending. This is old economy thinking. We can reduce taxes by tackling the wasteful spending of government, specifically in the top-heavy administration of our healthcare and education systems. I would have to believe that for many of you in the room, one of the most important topics today is about your future prospects for a career here at home. Over the past 4 years, the current government has provided $590 million in corporate handouts, and yet we have 2,700 fewer full-time jobs in Nova Scotia. Our party is committed to eliminating the cabinet-controlled slush fund and invest in the true job creators in Nova Scotia, entrepreneurs and business owners, where 80% of the private sector jobs are created. We will make Nova Scotia a small business tax-free zone, eliminating the 3.5% small business tax. And finally, the PC platform makes one other very serious commitment that you should be aware of. We will reintroduce legislation that governments must balance budgets every year. Our debt has grown by over $2 billion in the last 4 years and now sits at $14 billion. Balancing budgets is hard for governments. Not balancing budgets is very hard for future Nova Scotians. Thank you.
PCD candidate Gord Gamble, thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from the Liberal candidate for this riding, Mr. Alan Rowe.
Well, thanks very much, Troy, and students with the radio and television faculty here at the NSCC, other students, and as well members of the public who have come out this afternoon. I have to tell you, I'm so very happy to have been invited here this afternoon to have this chance to speak with all of you, along with my fellow candidates, Mary Bingo and Gord Gamble. I believe that this next hour or so could very well be one of the most important hours of my campaign process so far, because I have a chance now to speak to some of the most important people in our province today, and that's you, the young people of our province. It's an opportunity to hear from you and to discuss with you some of the key issues that are on your minds. Young people who know the value of an education, young people who know the importance of an entrepreneurial spirit, the significance of growing up and growing a community and a province's economy from the ground up, not from the top down, hiring local people in local businesses, people who want to work here, people who want to stay here, people who want to raise their families here. It's so very important then to all of us that you, our future workers, our entrepreneurs, our business people, our retailers, our executives and so on, are confident that you know that your government is working for you on your behalf to achieve what you want you and your province to achieve. I know that myself and a Liberal government are prepared to take significant action. We're prepared to listen to you and to help you in all of your desires and goals for yourselves and your province. This isn't about scoring or rating one candidate against the other. This is about choosing who best will represent you in the legislature. Thanks a lot for coming this afternoon. Looking forward to our discussions.
Liberal candidate Alan Rowe, thank you. And next we'll hear from NDP candidate Mary Vingo with her opening statements. Ms. Vingo?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Troy and everyone here today. It's wonderful to be here in this great green state-of-the-art building and discussing the democratic process with so many young people. I've been out on the doorsteps and I've met many of you who live around here, and I'm so glad that some of you are here today to discuss issues that are so important to us. I am so proud to be here as the NDP candidate. I'm hoping to replace Marilyn Moore, who has been our MLA for 3 terms and who's done such a good job of representing this community. I've certainly heard that many times on the doorsteps in Dartmouth South. I've been part of this community for, I guess, since 1990. My husband and I moved here. We've raised our girls here. We've gone through the Dartmouth school system here, and I've become very involved in the community as an artist, as a parent, and as an educator. My girls both did their higher education here in Nova Scotia, so higher education is a subject very dear to my heart. The NDP core values of caring for our community, our seniors, giving our children the best possible start, and providing access to the best possible health care are very dear to my heart. We have made some very big strides in the past 4 years. We have 8,000 less people living in poverty. We have the highest credit rating we've ever had. And I don't think we should turn the clock back now. I hope we can finish what we started. Thank you.
And thank you. On today's program, we'll be discussing some of the key issues facing Nova Scotia. Each candidate will have a chance to weigh in and tell us what they'll do if elected. First off, something close to many people here today, post-secondary education.
When it comes to post-secondary education, Nova Scotia students have lots of options, with 11 universities and 13 campuses of the Nova Scotia Community College to choose from. But stats show they also have the highest debt in the country, with an average of $27,000 after a 4-year undergrad degree. And on top of that, they have to pay interest. Right now, the provincial government spends more than $400 million a year on post-secondary institutions. But future funding is uncertain, as some institutions struggle to keep classes full with an aging population and fewer young people.
And it's now time for our first question on post-secondary education. It comes to us from Riley Loy.
How's it going, candidates? I just really wanted to know how you're going to eliminate student debt, because us students have more important things to worry about than paying you back, like eating.
We'll start first with Liberal candidate Alan Rowe.
Well, Riley, it's a great question, and there are a lot of things that you should be more concerned with than eating is certainly one of them. There's a two-prong answer to this question. The first thing we have to do is try and ease the burden of your debt as quickly as we can. And a Liberal government will eliminate the interest on the provincial tax portion of all student loans. That's the one thing we can do to try and make things easier right out of the gate. The next thing we have to do is get you a job, a good paying, permanent job rather in the province that you can work at so you can start repaying that loan as quickly as possible. We've got several incentives in place. Most critically, we want to revamp and modernize our apprenticeship program to give apprentices better opportunities to work elsewhere and have those hours count here if they have to go away. We're also going to make it more flexible for local companies to hire, or at least hire more apprentices instead of the limit. So we want to change the ratio of the number of apprentices to the number of employers. We've also got a program that we're very proud of, the Graduate to Opportunity program. $6.5 million, which will provide as payroll incentives to companies who hire new graduates for a period of at least 12 months. The idea is to get you into the workforce, get you working, grow our economy that way, and give you that opportunity.
Sorry to stop you there, Mr. Rowe. It's just we have a reminder from our producer that we have very strict timelines that we have to abide by.
Yep.
And so we'll go now to Mary Vingo.
Well, this is a great question. The government has a strong commitment to making post-secondary education more reasonable for all of us. We provided an extra $18 million this year to student assistance programs. We're putting that to upfront costs. So we're really raising the amount of non-repayable loans to students as opposed to, and it's geared to income levels. So we're trying to put the help where it's needed most, which is one of the core values of this government and one of the reasons that I'm here today. We have doubled the student assistance. We've also introduced Canada's first debt cap, so the amount of debt that you can actually rack up is capped now. This is the first time it's happened in Canada. And we've upped the textbook allowance, and we've limited tuition increases to 3%. And that puts us squarely in the middle of higher institutions across Canada in terms of our tuition rates. So we have a big, we have a commit, sorry?
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Am
cut
I
you off
finished?
there. I was just, yeah, we have our timer out here
sorry,
in front of the stage.
I'm finished.
Didn't- Sorry, it's just we're under strict regulations. And now we'll go to you,
Good.
Mr. Gamble.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Raleigh. And I certainly ate my share of craft dinner back in those days of university, so I know what he's talking about eating. But I think to this question specifically, first of all, we need to make sure that we make education affordable for our youth so that when they are graduating, we can reduce the amount of debt that they're graduating with. And so our government is committed, our party is committed to establishing 5-year commitments to Nova Scotia Community College and our other higher learning education schools here in Nova Scotia to ensure they understand where their funding is going to be, not 1 year, not 2 years, but 5 years out. We have some very competent people running organizations like this one. They need to plan, and by doing that, they'll make your education less expensive. Specifically on debt, Riley, you're going to find out that not only are you going to carry student debt forward in Nova Scotia, but there's a lot of other aspects that you're going to be spending your money on every month, like your power bill, like your taxes. And those are the types of economic factors that we are trying to address within our platform. We need to lower your taxes. We need to freeze power rates so that you can afford to pay your school debt back after you've made that investment into your education. Those are important. And then lastly, it's about getting you a job because you won't be paying that loan back with interest until you enter the job market. And we need to do that by investing in our small businesses again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gamble. It's now time to check in with Katie Lonis, who's monitoring social media. Katie, what are people online asking about education?
Well, thanks, Troy. Education is definitely one of the most popular topics among students, not even just during election time, but throughout the year, and for good reason. We're going to go to Facebook now, and Gabe Smith is asking, do you think it's better to subsidize university students through direct payments to universities, or to put more money into scholarships that promote research in Nova Scotia? That's the question.
And we'll start with Mary Vingo.
Well, it's an excellent question. I'm not sure it's an either-or question, actually, but certainly this government has put its money up front to students and alleviating the tuition challenges up front by increasing the student aid program and bursaries and capping student debt. We also have a graduate retention program and other programs like that to help you when you graduate. So I think that we have taken the target approach of going to the students first. Obviously, we're managing a number of institutions and they all have different needs, and we're very committed to higher education here in the province, but I think it's fair to say that our priority has been students first and making sure that debt load is takeable, honorable.
Thank you. And Mr. Gamble?
I have to just reiterate, it's about making the economy in Nova Scotia a lot stronger than it is today. That is going to allow us to invest in both students and the higher education facilities here in Nova Scotia. So if we can get our taxes in order, if we can get our power rates in order, and families can afford to save a little bit of money on a regular basis so that they can support their children who want to pursue long-term higher education, those are the kind of factors that are critical in this time in Nova Scotia, and I hear it countless times on the doorstep. But I think we also want to inspire those youth to seek those opportunities for higher education by letting them see forward the career opportunities and job prospects that we have here in our province. We don't want to train people here in Nova Scotia to send them to Alberta, and we're doing far too much of that today. So let's create a strong economy here in Nova Scotia, and let's invest in small businesses who are going to create the job opportunities so that when you do receive your education, you can put it to work right away.
Thank you. And finally to you, Mr. Rowe.
Well, I think Gabe or Dave, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure what the name was of the person on Facebook, but it's fine to talk about all the things we want to do in creating jobs, but the key is we have to create those jobs. And that means that graduates and people coming out of school are not necessarily looking for existing jobs. They're actually able to create some new positions and perhaps in new ventures and new developments. And to do that, the Liberal government has clearly recognized there is a need. And we have committed to providing up to 300 scholarships per year for students, and this will be in the range of $10,000 to $15,000 each. And these are aimed at students who are coming out of school, university or college or wherever, with an idea, an entrepreneurial idea, a new venture idea, a business idea. These scholarships will be looked at and assessed on an individual basis, gearing to the fact that it's going to create a new source of employment, new source for jobs, and new opportunities to grow our economy from the ground up. That's the key. So that's an initiative we are committed to taking right away, to helping in that regard.
Thank you. Now, moving on, the next topic we'll tackle today is energy in Nova Scotia. Let's take a look at some of the issues relating to our power.
Energy issues in Nova Scotia are wide-ranging. Here's a quick snapshot. Almost 60% of Nova Scotia's power comes from coal, just over 20% from natural gas, and the rest is from renewable sources like wind and hydro. Nova Scotia has the highest power rates in Canada at over 15 cents per kilowatt hour for the average home. Rates have gone up each year for the last 5 years, and they're projected to rise again in 2014. Nova Scotia Power Incorporated is a private company that has a monopoly on power generation and distribution in the province. The Muskrat Falls hydroelectric project is closer to reality. Supporters say it's crucial to ensure a safe and steady power supply, but critics say ratepayers will lose out in the deal. So lots happening in energy.
And let's get to our first question in energy, coming to us today from Carlos Doubleday.
Hi, my name is Carlos Doubleday. My question is, how would you make the power, Nova Scotia Power, more affordable for individuals in the province? We pay high prices as it is, and it's going up and up and up. So what are you going to do about it? That is a question.
And we'll start with you, Mr. Gamble.
This is a great question. This is a very serious issue here in our province. I want to correct one comment that was made in the intro. Nova Scotia Power is a private company, but it is a very regulated organization, and it's regulated by the province, the government of Nova Scotia, through an Energy Act. So there are controls and mechanisms in place that a government can put in place to ensure that our power rates do not have to go up every year. We shouldn't accept that. You shouldn't accept that. So our commitment to Nova Scotians in our platform is to freeze power rates for the next 5 years. And we're going to do that by addressing the relationship we currently have. As I said earlier, I'm a business owner, and I would have loved to have gotten up every day knowing that I had a 9% rate of return on every dollar I was going to invest in my business. That's the arrangement we currently have with Nova Scotia Power. 9% rate of return. It's unacceptable. They're operating in other jurisdictions, by the way, with performance-based rates of return. And that's the direction that we want to move forward with Nova Scotia Power. We want to stay committed to renewable energy sources. It's critical that our province does that in a timely, cost-effective manner. But first, we need to rein in Nova Scotia Power.
Thank you. And we'll move on to you next, Mr. Rowe.
Well, thanks very much. And with all respect to Mr. Gamble and his party's platform, we don't believe that freezing rates for 5 years is really going to get us anywhere in the long term. 5 years from now, we're going to see our rates skyrocket in order to compensate for those frozen rates. The Liberal Party has made it very clear we have a three-pronged approach to what we're going to do with Nova Scotia Power. We are going to break the monopoly of Nova Scotia Power. What does that mean? We are simply going to say that Nova Scotia Power should not have the right to dictate who has to take their power and who doesn't. If you don't want your power here in HRM, Nova Scotia Power is the only option you have. You should have opportunities to purchase your power from other smaller private companies. And these could be renewable sources of power, solar, wind, tidal power, whatever. You should have that opportunity, making it a competitive marketplace, which obviously will bring prices down. The other thing we are going to do immediately is remove the Efficiency Nova Scotia tax. It's a cost that ratepayers are paying right now in Nova Scotia to fund Nova Scotia and the efficiency program. We think the efficiency program is a marvelous program. We don't feel you should be paying for it. We're going to have Nova Scotia Power pay for that company.
Thank you. And Ms. Vingo?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say right off the bat that the first thing we've done and committed to doing and are continuing to do is keep the HST off electricity and home heating, something that the other parties are not committing to do, something which is saving you a great deal and will continue to save you. If you look at the rates, they have gone up 18% since the NDP took power, but because we've kept the HST, the provincial portion, off the power rates, they are effectively frozen. The reason they are as high as they are is because we are wedded to fossil fuels. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I think we cannot do this any longer. We've got to get off coal, we've got to go green, and the NDP is the only party that has a sustainable green energy plan to get us off fossil fuels. We have a 40% target by 2020, and we have to go that way. We can't keep passing on this issue to future generations and saying, oh, we'll do it when we can afford it, we'll get there. No, we have to do it now. This is the only party that has that plan. It's very, very clear. We already have the CONFIT program, by the way, which allows other producers onto the grid, solar, wind. That's already existing. And with the Maritime Link, we'll have a safe, secure energy source for 30 years to come.
Thank you. And before we head back to our social media desk to hear our next question, I'd just like to ask each candidate to be mindful of the timer on the stage. Katie, what's our next question?
Well, Troy, energy is a growing issue in Nova Scotia, and not just among students. A lot of people are wondering what's to come, including Paula Diab on Twitter. She wants to know, if elected, what will your party do to increase renewable energy in Nova Scotia?
And we'll start with you, Mr. Rowe.
Well, as I said, this is the very thing we're talking about. We can't keep staying with Nova Scotia Power, which is saying this is the way we are going to obtain our power. We want to look at other renewable sources of power. And to do that, you've got to look at other companies and other potential providers. We have to give them the opportunity. And Ms. Vingo mentioned that this already exists. It only exists in 6 communities, 6 areas of our province, but certainly not in HRM or any of the other major areas of our province. It's not right that certain areas can purchase their power from independent sources, which provide it from wind or solar or tidal or whatever, and not here in the HRM. That's what we're saying. If the playing field is supposed to be level, let's level the playing field. Make it a fair, open, and competitive marketplace, and to do that, we have to break that monopoly.
Thank you. And Ms. Vingo?
This is a bit of hocus pocus here. The idea that you can break the monopoly, it sounds really good. It gets everybody all excited. But if you look at Alberta, if you look at New Brunswick, that tried to do this, it didn't work. They ended up patching it back all together again. The fact is that you need a major supplier, and this supplier owns the grid, right? So you can't suddenly say, oh, you're going to go and you're going to build another grid. I mean, we all are on one structure, and we already have a program which allows smaller producers on. We continue to expand that program called the CONFIT program, so we're way ahead of the game here. And just about the rates of return, everybody's always talking about the rates of return. They've actually been reduced under the NDP government from 12 to 9%. Still high, still working, but we brought them down. We did not invent Emera. Conservatives did. We're still working with it. We're trying to build a sustainable green energy future for this province with a combination of Nova Scotia Power and local producers, and we've got the best plan to do so.
Thank you. And Mr. Gamble?
Here's the reality that I'm hearing on the doorstep. There's seniors in this province that can't afford to heat their home on fixed incomes because their power rates have gone up by 30%. There are businesses in this province that are deciding that they can't compete in the marketplace because they're paying for power rates that are too high in this province. The PC government was the first government to introduce targets for renewable energy sources. The PC government is committed to it. But we can't do it at the cost of all Nova Scotians and driving people out of their homes and out of their communities. We have to do it at a pace and a cost arrangement that works. And so our commitment is to stay to the 40% rate of renewable energy sources, but we want to extend that from 2020 to 2025. That short period of 5 years will allow Nova Scotia to pay off some of the debt associated with the coal and legacy projects that have been placed in this province for far too long, we agree. But they can pay that off, and then we can use those resources to invest in the great opportunities that we have in this province for renewable energy sources. But we can't do it at any cost.
Thank you. We're now going to turn to take a look at the issue of jobs and employment here in Nova Scotia.
Employment is an important issue for both young and aging Nova Scotians. Statistics show the province has gained several thousand jobs in the last 5 years, but almost all of them have been part-time jobs, and most of those have been in the service industry. That has many people calling for the government to create more full-time, well-paying jobs to keep Nova Scotia's skilled workforce in the province.
Our first question relating to jobs and employment comes to us from Denise Parrott.
Hi, my name is Denise Parrott, and I'm wondering what you would do in government to keep and maintain full-time jobs in Nova Scotia.
And we'll start with you, Ms. Vingo.
Well, thank you for that, Denise. This is a question I was looking forward to answering because I think our government's track record on this has been fantastic. We came into into government in 2009 in the worst recession since the Great Depression. The whole world economy was collapsing. And yet, 4 years later, we have 8,000 fewer people living in poverty, and we have the highest credit rating this province has ever had, and more foreign investment than anywhere else in North America. Now, how did this happen? This happened because our premier has gone out like no premier before him and fought to bring jobs and create jobs and keep jobs in this province. We have the largest contract we have ever had in our history with ShipStart here. We are looking at, we have invested in our high-tech sector, we have reinvested in our traditional sector, we have upgraded outmoded facilities, we have invested in the creative economy, we have invested in local agriculture, we have a very, very strong plan for green sustainable energy. And in actual fact, in 2013, we had the
sorry,
lowest
Ms. Mingo, I'm going to have
unemployment
to stop you there.
in Atlantic Canada.
And Mr. Gamble, we'll go to you next, please.
Sure. I'm going to say something that I hope you'll understand what I'm trying to, my point here. I don't believe governments create jobs. I believe governments create an environment for jobs to be created. And I think we have to get away from governments renting jobs like we've been doing in this province, and in fairness, far beyond the time that the NDP have been in government. You know, I quoted some statistics about the millions of dollars that we've given in corporate handouts. In fairness to Mr. Dexter and the government, many governments have been doing that for many, many years, and we're still falling behind in true full-time employment, as was said in the intro. So we need a different approach to this, and I think this is exactly where Jamie Bailey has stood up with a very bold statement to say, we're going to stop giving away your tax dollars to corporations. We're going to stop. We're still going to invest in Nova Scotia Business Inc., which goes out and does good research, makes good business, rational business decisions on the types of sector jobs that we should be bringing to this province. But the real job creators in this province are the Eastlinks, the Shannexes, the great entrepreneurs, Clearwater Seafoods, the great entrepreneurs that have come out of Nova Scotia. Those are the job creators that we need to invest our money, your tax dollars in to help you get more jobs.
Sorry to stop you there. And we'll go next to you, Mr. Rowe.
You know, the facts speak for themselves, and the facts are, we had 4,000 people leave our province last year. We had 1,700 people leave our province in the first quarter of this year. That's the greatest exodus of people since 1971. So you can talk all you want about jobs that are being created, but they're part-term or part-time and temporary jobs. Hundreds of millions of dollars given away to big corporations to bring in short-term jobs. That's no way to grow an economy. Growing the economy is from the ground up. Investing in our young people, investing in our future entrepreneurs, investing in our local businesses, giving them tax incentives and tax breaks wherever we can, giving opportunities to companies to hire young people and start their new businesses wherever they can, giving opportunities to graduates to start new ventures whenever they can. We have to grow our economy bottom up. It's no point in just giving it away to a company that's here and gone in a couple of years, taking its jobs with it.
Thank you. And Katie Lonis is standing by now with another question from Facebook. Katie?
Thank you, Troy.
Pardon me? Oh, excuse me.
You started that.
Oh, I thought there was a second question.
No, it's just...
Oh, we're going to do that right now. That's fine.
I missed it too. It's okay. Go ahead, Katie.
All right, we're going to go to look at Twitter right now. A lot of buzz on Twitter about all the issues that have been brought up. Still, keep tweeting at WTV_NSCC. Your tweets are welcome. We're getting tweets from at Trish Henneberry, also at the Cats Meow 18s tweeting at us. And but right now we're going to go to a question from Facebook. And this one's from Elise Snow Cropla. She wants to know, the average student graduates with roughly $25,000 in debt, but they are unable to find work in their fields. What are you willing to do to change this?
And we'll start with you, Mr. Gamble.
Yeah, well, as I said in my opening, I was very pleased to be able to work with the Nova Scotia Community College. And I would encourage, as I mentioned, Crystal McManus, I don't know if Crystal's here or not. Crystal and I had an arrangement that if I was in the position to hire somebody, I could contact her, and within half an hour, I had 3 highly qualified resumes on my desk. So I think we need strong partnerships between institutions like the Nova Scotia Community College and our business community, and in particular with our small business community, which is where the growth opportunities exist here in our province. I haven't said the term yet, but our goal here in the next 4 years is to make Nova Scotia a small business tax-free zone. So suddenly, I can tell you firsthand what it was like to have your best year in business, to hand your financials off to your accountant, only for them to come back and tell you the tax bill that you now owe the provincial government. And your mind shifts from hiring another person or adding a piece of equipment to grow your business to a cash flow situation of how am I going to pay CRA and the provincial government my tax bill. So that making Nova Scotia a tax-free zone is going to be make us a very competitive environment for jobs here in Nova Scotia.
Thank you. And Mr. Rowe?
Well, again, we've gone around this a couple of times, but again, it's a matter of spending our money more wisely, and that's not giving it away to big corporations. It's taking that money and putting it at the grassroots level. We talked about, eliminating the tax on the provincial portion of student loans. We've talked about our Graduate to Opportunity program, where we'll provide tax and payroll incentives to companies hiring new grads. We've talked about our research graduation program, where 300 graduates every year can get scholarships of $10,000 to $15,000 to develop new businesses, to start new ventures, to create new opportunities. That's the key. Starting at the bottom, growing our economy locally, investing in our people. We've got a great base of people in Nova Scotia from all walks of life, from all ages. It's time to have the confidence that those people know how to run their businesses, know how to run their lives, know what the future holds in store for them. It's time for us to give them the assistance as a government that they need to do that.
Thank you. And to you, Ms. Vingo.
Okay, with respect, I'd like to pose a question to my colleagues, which is about the Ship Start Here project. We've heard a lot of stuff in the newspapers about corporate handouts. Now, when we were competing for this contract, which is a 30-year contract with 4,000 jobs, 11,000 in spin-off, Quebec and BC were competing with us for this huge, huge contract. And both Quebec and BC were putting money on the table to get their contract. We put money on the table, $100 million, repayable when the jobs are created. Would either of my colleagues not competed? Would either of them said, oh, we're not going to give you any money because you're a big corporation and we're only going to build from the ground up? I don't think so. I really don't. In fairness, I don't think anybody would have done that because it's a huge, huge contract and you have to compete. It's a very competitive world. Yes, small business is important. We were the first government to lower the small business tax by 40%. It hadn't happened in 20 years. So we have a very big commitment to small business as well. Am I out of time?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That wraps up. It's okay. It's time now to turn to healthcare. It's always a hot topic come election time. Now, this is obviously an issue that affects us all. So let's take a look at our introduction for healthcare.
Healthcare is a complex issue here in Nova Scotia. There are calls for more doctors and fewer health authorities. The province has some of the longest wait times in the country, up to 2 years for some surgeries. And people in rural areas face other challenges, such as access to healthcare and frequent emergency room closures. More support for mental health services is also seen as a critical issue.
We'll now hear our first question from Colette Williams-Dukes.
Hi, I'm Colette Williams-Dukes, and my question is, how are you going to improve the lack of beds in long-term care facilities?
And we'll start with you, Mr. Rowe.
There's no doubt the Liberals are clearly aware of the fact that we need long-term care beds in our province, that we need to recover and refurbish many of our facilities as they are right now. But it's too simplistic, quite frankly, we believe, to just say that's what we have to do for our long-term and elderly patients and elderly people. What we have to do is start looking more at what the needs are of our seniors earlier in their lives. We have to find the money, spend our money wisely, and put it towards programs, quite frankly, that keep seniors in their homes longer. That's where seniors want to be. But to do that, they may need incentives to be able to work on their homes, to have repairs done to their homes, to make them more accessible or easier to move around in. They may need in-home care services. They may need to be able to take advantage of these sorts of things, or transportation to and from hospital units. Rather than just saying, you go so long in your life, and when you suddenly hit a point in your life when your health totally fails you, that's when we put you in a long-term care bed. There's two issues to it. As I say, yes, we have to maintain and we have to grow our long-term care beds where possible, but we have to look earlier in the process. And the Liberals have a definite plan on how we can spend our healthcare dollars much more.
I'm going to stop you there, Mr. Rowe. I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but with our time constraints, I understand that you do have a lot that you want to say about each issue because they're obviously important, but I just need you to keep being mindful of that to each of you. And we'll go next to you, Ms. Vingo.
Well, between 1993 and 2003, there were exactly 41 new long-term care beds introduced in this province. So when we came in 2009, it was in crisis. We have introduced almost 1,000 new beds. We have refurbished another 800, and we have a plan to bring in another 700 over the next few years. I agree with Mr. Rowe. This is only part of the issue. Long-term beds are very, very important, but it's also important to improve our caregiving benefits, our programs to help seniors stay in their homes, our home care programs, all of which we have increased under this government. It is a two-pronged approach. We can only do what we pay for. We have brought the budget back to balance. We can now do more. It has always been in our core values to improve home care and to improve life of our seniors. It's always, always, always been number one for the NDP.
Thank you. And to you, Mr. Gamble.
There are 640 individuals working in the administration of our healthcare making over $100,000 a year, and none of them interact with a patient on a day-to-day basis. That's the challenge we have. We have 10 health boards operating in a province of less than 1 million people. The province of Alberta has 4. So our commitment is to reduce the administration burden on healthcare and redirect what we believe is $60 million that could be shaved from the administration cost into the healthcare system. And to the point of the question, which is long-term care, this is exactly the issue that's resident in our hospitals, is that many of our hospitals are not burdened, I shouldn't say that, they're not burdened, they're becoming long-term care facilities because we can't move them out of the hospital. So it's backing up the acute care, the emergency rooms in our hospitals. There are many community hospitals that if you go there, 80 to 90% of the people should be in a long-term care facility, and they're not because they're not there. And that's our last point. We do believe we will build more long-term care facilities. But let's consult with communities, and let's put those long-term care facilities in the communities in which these people live today so that they can maintain their family support systems when they make that change in their life.
Thank you. And we're now going to go back to Katie Lonis and find out what people online want to know. Katie?
Well, Troy, like you said, healthcare is definitely a hot topic online, and social media is agreeing. We're going to go to a question from Twitter from @Dalrymple_K. She wants to know, what will the candidates do to increase mental health education in schools?
And we'll start with you, Ms. Fingo.
Well, the New Democrats have a mental health strategy, which was introduced last year, which looks at all aspects of serving people with mental disabilities, mental issues. And it involves working, it involves schooling, it involves housing. It's a care-based approach which looks at individuals and the needs of individuals as opposed to the needs of institutions or the needs of larger organizations. It's about starting with the individual and seeing what they need. And this has been welcomed by people in the field. We're still at the beginning of a long journey. We know we aren't there yet, but we have made significant strides in the area of targeting the individual first and the needs of that individual.
Thank you. And to you, Mr. Gamble?
Sure. Very serious, very challenging topic in our province here today is mental health. I'm sure there's a case very close and dear to all of our minds. This is an opportunity for two of our larger organizations to become very collaborative in their workings, and that's the education and the healthcare system. I believe the education system has a significant role to play in the identification of those that may have mental health challenges. And they can do that early, and the earlier, of course, the better. And then we need to align those individuals and those families to our healthcare system and invest in programs, early intervention programs in our healthcare system. But this is a classic case where we have very silo thinking currently happening in our education system and our healthcare system. We need to bring those two organizations, have those two organizations talking to each other, because unfortunately kids are getting missed and they should be identified much earlier.
Thank you. And finally to you, Mr. Rowe.
Actually, I think I'm going to agree with both of my colleagues on the stage, and I think we're all in agreement that, when it comes to the issue of mental health and serving our residents and our constituents, this is something we all need to be working together towards in whatever program works best. And I think we all share the common ideas that we need to look at early intervention as well as what happens later in life. It's critical that we look and spend our dollars helping children before they even get to school, when we start to realize that there are issues that we can change and we can adapt. So we've got to infuse money early. That's got to carry on right through the school years, right through to secondary and post-secondary if possible, and onwards, and again into later life. And we have clear initiatives on how we want to deal with early education, education in the early years, and as well what we want to do for seniors and dementia care as well. It's a long, complicated thing, but again, it comes down to spending our money a little more wisely, putting it on the front lines of all of these things where it's necessary, rather than just wasting it in many cases.
All right, thank you. Now, during our program, we've been taking questions from our audience. We're going to get to a few of them now. Our first one comes from Brandon Stewart, and he wants to know, being a person with a disability, finding a job has always been a struggle for him. Now, if you were elected, what could you or your party do to help these people with disabilities find work? And we'll start with you, Mr. Gamble.
Sure. It's an area that I have some direct business experience in, and that we were able to work very closely with DASC Services here in Dartmouth, an adult services group that works with disabled people who have a lot to contribute to our society, but they need that entry level into the workforce. So I think there are some existing community organizations that we need to continue to fund to help those that are challenged into the entry level. And a lot of the times, again, and DASC was a great example of this, it's that first job. If we can help them get that first job, start to create their own independence, create their lives around that, then that is an opportunity to change that individual situation for the good for a long, long time.
All right, thank you. And moving on to you, Mr. Rowe.
Once again, this is a full life issue. This is a start to finish life issue. Many people are born with a disability or an issue that is going to challenge them for the rest of their life. We have to be able to assist them right from the very beginning and help them move through the entire stages of their life, through their education, through to getting a job. We have clearly indicated that we are ready and prepared to look at all of the issues that are going to assist disabled persons in this province and review all of the things that are already in place with an eye to improving them wherever and however possible. It's critical that we give everyone an opportunity to work in this province and to grow our economy. But to do that, we need the money. Where does that money come from? It comes from proper, responsible, and prudent spending so that we can direct it to the right areas and the front lines where these kind of things are essential.
Thank you. And on to you, Ms. Vingo.
Well, for this question, I'm very proud to be a New Democrat, because the New Democratic government has adopted, finally, first government ever, Nova Scotia, has adopted a strategy for helping people with disabilities, which was approved by the UN. My colleague in Dartmouth North, Steve Esty, was a part of this. And for the first time, instead of looking at institutions and what they need, we're starting by looking at people and what they need. So whether it's housing, employment, health, we start with the individual. We determine the needs of the individual with their family and give them the tools that they need to work and to live and to achieve health care in the province. It's a major rethinking of the way we provide services. So instead of, I believe my colleague had mentioned silos, instead of the silos, you go here for this and you go there for that, we start with the individual and we bring what is needed to the individual. It was adopted this summer. It was a huge deal. We had people from all over the world advising us on this, and I'm out of time.
Thank you. Now, our next question comes to us today from Lucas Mancini. He asks, what are your feelings on Nova Scotia's plan to extend healthcare funding coverage for gender reassignment surgery? And we'll start with you, Mr. Rowe.
That's a great question, actually, and I think it's something that clearly is of importance to a growing part of our society today. And what we have to do in order to achieve that, not at the cost perhaps of some other issues and areas that we need to spend in healthcare, is once again go back to how we receive our monies. You know, Mr. Gamble laid out his party's plans for reducing the number of healthcare boards in the province. We want to reduce the number of district health associations from 10 to 2. And we feel that that's all that's sufficient for our population of 950-odd thousand people. Once we have that money redirected to front lines, and we've looked after our emergency rooms and our ORs, and some of the things that we have to do for seniors and young people in healthcare, and looking at early problems, and looking at dementia problems and so on, then we'll have more money to be able to assist people who do want to have an active life and want to feel comfortable in their lifestyles and provide money for those kinds of things. So.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Vingo?
Well, once again, I'm really proud to be a New Democrat, because we've already said that we're going to pay for this. It's extremely important. I have many friends in the transgender community. And how could you possibly not offer this as it's a medical requirement? It's not a choice. It's not like, don't get me started. I'm very proud of our party's position on this issue, and I think it's the only way to go. It's the right way to go, and yeah, let's keep it. Let's not cut it back.
And on to you, Mr.
Yeah,
Gamble.
I would commend the NDP government for the stance that they've taken on this. These are very challenging situations, and I'm pleased that they've done this. I think it's important now that we continue to, as Mr. Rowe has said, and our platform has said, we need to keep finding the resources within our healthcare system so that we can address some of these challenging situations and your unique circumstances. So, good healthcare has to be delivered, but it has to start by reducing the amount of administration in our system. So freeing up those dollars becomes ever more important when governments are faced with situations like this transgender situation that was presented.
Thank you. Now our next question comes to us today from Theo Lakis, and he wants to know, what plans do you have to encourage new local businesses to get established in Nova Scotia? Starting with you, Ms. Vingo.
Well, as I said, and thank you for the question, we, as a government, were the first to reduce the small business tax. We did a 40% reduction, which was the first government in 20 years to do that. So the other guys have been around for a long time, and they keep talking about small business, but we were the first government to reduce the small business tax. We've also have a number of programs to support innovation, to support training, to support non-conventional training within the small business community. And you'll see in downtown Dartmouth today a number of organizations that have benefited from that. We also have a microcredit program which allows the smallest of entrepreneurs, the startups, to get in there and get $10,000 with very little collateral to start a bakery or to start a print shop or to start something that they believe in, a bike shop or whatever. And that's been very, very successful. So we've supported business from the smallest to the largest. We don't leave out anybody, and we've worked really, really hard because I agree that I'm out of time. Right?
Sorry to restrict you. I obviously have a lot to say about this. And we're going to move back now to Mr. Gamble. I understand that this was a major part of your opening statement and the PC's platform, so if you wouldn't mind just going into a little bit more detail.
This is in my wheelhouse, no question. This is my area of small business. And I just want to clarify something. The NDP government indicates that they reduced the small business tax by 40%. They did, but they also decreased the threshold for small businesses from $500,000 to $350,000, one of the lowest in Canada. Meaning, as a taxpayer, a small business taxpayer, my tax bill went up as a small business owner. It didn't go down. So our proposal is to take the threshold back to $500,000, which makes us competitive with the other provinces here in Canada, as we do compete for small business jobs, and to eliminate the tax. And I can tell you, this is a very, very impactful decision to take. These are the types of decisions that will create jobs in Nova Scotia that aren't here today. This will allow those small business owners to take risk and invest back in their businesses by hiring that additional person, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, but 80% of our jobs come from that sector, come from that small business sector. So don't allow your government to keep writing big checks for big corporations that are renting jobs for short term.
Sorry, I know you can go on for a while about that. No, it's okay. You specified that that's your specialty, so we're going to go now to Mr. Rowe to hear what he has to say about it.
Well, first of all, we will increase the equity tax credit for small business operators. We will also do a comprehensive review of all taxes in our province, with an eye to reducing taxes whenever it is prudently possible to do so, and to provide opportunities for our young companies, our growing companies, to grow and succeed. As Mr. Gamble has said, we have to stop the mentality of big corporation giveaways. Take that money and spend it where it should be spent on the front lines, providing tax incentives, providing opportunities to companies to grow and get their feet under them. And to do that, as I say, we need to look at all aspects of it. The HST, with all respect, Mr. Gamble's party is proposing slashing the HST by 2% immediately. We have said we will cut the HST when we know it is prudently responsible to do that, and only then. $400 million is the lost revenue by cutting the HST by 2%, 180 per percent, 180 million. Where is that money going to come from? Our concern is that's going to come from services and other areas of the province that we don't want to see it having to come from. So,
thank you. Now our next question is, it's actually an anonymous question, and that is, what is the most important issue in this riding to you? Be it what we've discussed here today or any other issue at all. And we'll start with you, Mr. Gamble.
I think it's growth. I think Dartmouth is poised for some very significant growth right here. And the downtown is a good example of that, but our suburbs are growing as well. But it needs to be managed. I think we have some infrastructure challenges here in Dartmouth from many of you are probably well aware of that, from busing, transit services. So I think that too much of the responsibility for that growth has been downloaded to the municipalities. And we need a different type of partnership now between the provincial government and the municipalities. Our party is talking about, is included in our platform, not only a transportation strategy to look at how we do move people and goods throughout our province and throughout the world, but right here in our riding, we want to look at a regional transportation authority, bringing together with our municipal leadership, Metro Transit, the Harbour Bridge Authority, and other agencies that are involved in transporting goods and services. It is critical that we start lobbying the federal government as a province, not as a municipality, but as a province, to ensure that we get the infrastructure dollars that are available to us when we compete against the large cities like Toronto and Vancouver. And we need a stronger voice at the table to do that.
Thank you. And Mr. Rowe?
Well, again, I'm quite certain all three of us are going to be in agreement on this because we all live here. This is our community. This is why we're running in the first place. We want to represent our community. And I think we're all in agreement that what we would love to see is downtown Dartmouth and the riding of Dartmouth South in particular growing and flourishing. And there's lots of ways we can do that. And as Mr. Gamble has said, it requires a greater degree of conversation and interaction between both our provincial and our municipal government. And I believe that can happen. I believe that's going to happen, perhaps regardless of which provincial government gets into power. It has to happen because we need that to happen. Downtown Dartmouth could serve as a crucible, a model community for all of Canada. We're on one of the most beautiful harbors in the country. We have the city of Halifax on the other side, but we're not bringing people from Halifax. We're not bringing those tourists over from Halifax. We have to create things here, opportunities, small businesses, niche retailers, perhaps an aquarium, perhaps a science park. There's lots of opportunities if we have the vision, the wherewithal, and the incentive for people to come up with those ideas and then put them in place and try to move them forward.
Thank you. And finally on to you, Ms. Fingo.
Well, yeah, I just think it's interesting. We're all talking about all the wonderful growth that's happened in Dartmouth. I mean, in fact, we are thriving at the moment, and I think our government can take some small credit for having at least been partly involved in that. We created 250 new places at NSCC. We have a lot of new businesses opening up. They're sponsored by programs that we have in place. So yes, there's more to do, but we are doing something right. As I said, we have 8,000 fewer people living in poverty. How did that happen in such a difficult economic time, except by very good planning and budgeting by this government? I just want to say healthcare is the thing that I hear on the doorsteps the most, and there's a lot of concern about these super boards that the Liberals are proposing and the Tories, that we're going to go back to the times of the 90s when we cut healthcare, we cut hospital beds, we cut doctors, we cut teachers, and I don't want to see us go back to that. I want to see us keep moving forward in a measured, balanced approach, which has got us through a very difficult time, and we're poised very well now for the future.
Thank you. And our last question today comes to us from Nadine McDonald. Over the last decade, we have lost many young adults to Western provinces because decent jobs are becoming more difficult to obtain here in Nova Scotia. What does your party have planned to retain and return young people to our province, starting with Mr. Rowe?
How many times do we need to say it? We have to stop spending and giving corporate money away. We have to create our jobs here. We have to create the local jobs from the ground up. We have to give incentives to our graduates to stay here and to create opportunities for them to grow new ventures and to start new ventures. We have to provide opportunities for our apprentices, if they had to go away, to be able to come back, that their hours that they worked while they're away now count back here in the province. But more importantly, we want to modify the apprenticeship program, for example, so that they didn't have to leave in the first place. We come back to the same issue every time. Everyone's leaving because the jobs are elsewhere. The jobs need to be here, not the short-term jobs, not the temporary jobs, the bottom line jobs that are going to move us forward and continue to move us forward for this generation and generations to come. That requires prudent spending and a bit of innovation and a bit of hard decisions that have to be made, quite frankly, and we're ready to do that.
Thank you. And Ms. Vingo?
Again, it comes back to these renter jobs that we keep hearing about. Is 30-year contract a renter job? That's the shipbuilding contract. It's 30 years. Is that a renter job? Is that going to disappear? They talk about Port Hawkesbury as funding a sinkhole or something. There's 1,000 people employed in Port Hawkesbury now because this government put their money on the line and modernized that mill, and that mill is now the most efficient in North America. Is that renter jobs? Is IBM renter jobs? And to speak to the apprentices, we already do count apprentice hours outside the province. In the province, there's been some misconception about that, but in fact the whole apprenticeship strategy was looked at. We brought in the unions, we brought in the non-unionized workers, we brought in industry, we had a big think tank about the whole thing, and we fixed it. So apprenticeship is actually doing quite well in this province right now, and yes, your hours are recognized when you work outside the province.
Thank you. And finally to you, Mr. Gamble.
Yeah, as Alan said, we've been talking about jobs, and I think you quite clearly understand we have a strategy here in place to invest in our small businesses. But I also had a conversation just this morning with an individual who's relocated here from Alberta, and she cannot believe the cost of living in Nova Scotia. And she's working, she's making $20 an hour, and she still can't understand the rate of power rates that she's paying. She can't understand her taxes and how they're so high, obviously coming from Alberta. So yes, we do need to create those jobs, and we have lots of great entrepreneurs, and I have confidence in them, and I know we can invest in them, and we will grow that. But we need to get the economy right. We need to address the fundamentals of our economy now. So yes, we want to invest in renewable energy, but we can't do it at any and all cost. It's not the right strategy. If those people move to Alberta, they're not paying any taxes here. So we need to retain our people by making our economy more affordable, freezing power rates, lowering the HST, taking the tax off tax on gasoline is just a start.
Thank you. And that's going to conclude our question period for the day. Before we end the program, let's take some time for our candidates to give us their final thoughts. We'll start with you, Ms. Vingo.
Just a second. I wasn't ready for that. You're catching me off guard, Troy. Well, as I've said before, I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud of what this government has done. Since 2009, when we took office after Conservative Premier Rodney MacDonald, we were facing a deficit of $1.3 billion, and we were in the middle of the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. Let's not forget that. Now in 2013, and this is a StatsCan statistic, and I know I've said it before, I'll say it again, we have 8,000 fewer people living in poverty. We have the highest credit rating this province has ever had, which used to be really important to the Liberals and the Conservatives, but now they say it's not important. That's a Dominion bond rating. That's not normally a big NDP fan, Dominion Bond Services. We're the #1 place in North America for foreign investment, and our Premier has fought like no other Premier before him to bring, create, and keep good jobs in this province. Ship Start Here brought us the biggest contract in our history. We've invested in high tech. We've invested in the traditional sector. We've invested in small business, outmoded facilities, protecting our natural land, 13%, higher than the UN recommendation. And most of all, we have a plan for sustainable green energy, tax-free, because we don't put the HST on our energy like the other guys. And most importantly, we've got a great healthcare system which needs more work, but we've already reduced emergency room closures by 92%, and we can't go forward to go back to the chaos of the 1990s. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vingo. And Mr. Gamble?
I'm very much an optimist, and I believe there is great potential here in our province of Nova Scotia. I agree the Irving Shipbuilding contract won by the Irvings is very significant to our future, as is the offshore exploration that's going on right now with British Petroleum and Shell. And of course, as I've stated many times, there is a great entrepreneurial spirit right here in Nova Scotia. And I think you, as young people coming into this economy, should be excited by future opportunities. So this election is a very important election for you, as you get to participate in the selection of the next leader of our province. And although I believe that there are innate qualities of leadership, I also believe that the experience one brings to a role of this magnitude is extremely important. Jamie Bailey, the leader of the PC Party, brings a very unique combination of education, public service, and private sector success to the role of Premier of Nova Scotia. Jamie is a chartered accountant who left that business to become Chief of Staff for Dr. John Hamm in a time in our history when we were balancing consecutive budgets. He left the public sector to become the CEO of the credit union and led that organization to record growth while reducing the administration costs. And now, as the leader of our party, Jamie Bailey has put forward the only fully costed platform to lead our province in a new direction. And it offers lower taxes, it offers stopping our wasteful spending, it brings freeze to our power rates, and it creates that environment in Nova Scotia for growth. I'd like to thank Alan and Mary for running 2 wonderful campaigns as we start to draw to a close, and I would like to thank you for this time and opportunity to speak to you again. Please vote on October the 8th. Thank you.
And Mr. Rowe.
Well, thanks very much, Troy, and I want to thank everybody who attended here in the theatre today and all the people that are watching on the live streams as well. A slightly different tack. As many of you may know, I had a reasonably successful career as a radio and television journalist for over 30 years, and after retiring last June, after 3 decades, I've decided to step into the political arena. That decision was one that I thought about very carefully. It's not one that I had to make. It's one that I truly wanted to make. I want to do this because representing the Dartmouth South, the riding of Dartmouth South, is an opportunity I would truly be honored to assume. My decision to run as a candidate for the Liberal Party was based on my belief that our leader, Stephen McNeil, has a vision. He has the plan, and he has the sincere determination to put Nova Scotians and all of you first, to make our province a better place for ourselves, for our families, and for our businesses and institutions. We can't keep going down the same road we've been going for the past 4 years, giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to corporations which create only short-term or part-time jobs. We can't continue to cut into what are some of the prime areas, or should be the prime areas of spending for government, healthcare and education, when it's our health and our young people that we need in order to succeed. We have to change our course. We have to spend more prudently. We have to take on and we have to challenge the big corporations, including Nova Scotia Power and Emera. And we have to put Nova Scotians first. Stephen McNeil is prepared to work hard. I'm prepared to work hard. I want to thank you all for your time here, and I also want to thank Mary and Gord for a tremendous campaign today. Thank you.
And thank you. We'll now take our closing remarks from our social media correspondent, Katie Lonis. Katie?
Thank you, Troy. And that is all from social media this afternoon, but feel free to keep the conversation going after the show by tweeting at WTV_NSCC. And don't forget, Waterfront TV airs Thursdays at 7 o'clock. It starts October 17th on Eastlink. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. And for Waterfront TV, I'm Katie Lonis. Back to you, Troy.
Thanks, Katie. Now I'd like to take this time to thank the candidates for really taking the time out of your busy schedules. It's getting closer, and I'd like to thank our studio audience for attending today and those who asked questions at home. For Waterfront TV, I'm Troy Merrick, and don't forget to vote October 8th. Thank you.